Good morning, Tallahassee. It's time to Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio. Now, here's your host, Aslan Hajavandi.
Time it is. It's Wake Up War Chant right here on ESPN 97.9. You already know my name. He's Corey Clark joining us as always. Corey, how are you, man?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
Good. You know, I asked you this question one time. I needed to ask it to you again for some clarification. How come you don't have like a middle initial? Why don't you go by Corey S. Clark?
Well, I always thought it sounded a little pretentious. The people that go with like, you know, I could have been Corey S. Clark. I could have been C. Scott Clark. I could have been C. S. Clark. It's funny, when I was becoming when I was a young sports writer, I really did, I don't know, have an internal debate for about 20 or 30 minutes. Like, okay, what's my name going to be? Which is ridiculous. Who else has, what other occupation do you figure out, okay, what am I going to be known as? Am I going to use my middle initial, my first initial, both initials, maybe my last initial? So that was a bizarre moment in the life of Corey Clark. And also, Corey Clark, I think, is a pretty good name for a sports writer. It's got a nice little flow to it.
It is.
So no, I never came close to being Corey S. Clark or C.S. Clark.
I worked with a dude in Montana who put his middle initial in his name, and
let me ask you, what kind of guy was he?
It fits the mold of the guy you would think that would put his middle initial in his name.
That's what I thought. That's what I was worried about. But I didn't want to be that guy.
Yeah, that guy was that guy. You're not that guy. That's why we like you, because you're that guy. You're the good guy.
I'm so much more.
Yeah, definitely. Folks, as always, this show brought to you by For the Table Hospitality. 3 great locations, all in College Town, Central, Township, Madison Social. Go check them out. It's hard to imagine you'd be disappointed. They're always great. I need to go check out Trivia Tuesdays over at Madison Social, but there was a baseball game yesterday, which kind of threw a wrench into that, Corey. We should challenge people. I feel like maybe like make an appearance once a month at Madison Social where we challenge all the peasants to come come get some in trivia.
Oh, in trivia, okay. I thought you meant just challenge them to fights.
No.
Which we could do. You know, the thing with it, if they have the right category. You know, there's some categories or subjects where there's nobody in the city that can beat me in trivia. But there's other ones like, you know, the good girl, the good wife, or Shameless, which I've watched Shameless, but I don't know enough trivia about it, which I would have no chance. Yeah. But I love trivia, man. Trivia's fun.
We should talk to those folks, see if they want to do something where they try to stump the B average. See if you can ace the B average.
You're really trying on the B average, huh? You're trying to make that go.
Man. Come on, man! I was so proud of myself, and you took away all my hopes and dreams on that, man.
We're just the Wake Up War Chant guys, right?
Yeah. All right, we'll take that, I guess. So anyhow, last night Florida State 5-2 winners over USF. They broke things open in the 8th inning with 4 runs. Stephen Wells doubled down the third baseline to get the eventual, proved to be the game tying run. I hate how that all works out. It put them ahead, and then they, tacked on runs due to walks and hit by pitches. So they're looking good. They're looking really good right now. 4 up and 4 down for the Noles. They're 4-0. They'll take on Troy this weekend. 3 games set starting Friday, 4:00. Tyler Holton, though, his status, we still don't know anything on. It sounds, I guess there are some mumbles. Ira posted something on the baseball message board that it does not sound very encouraging right now. And after the game, 11 pretty much said, to his understanding, they're going to analyze it, or they're going to give it one more look today, and then they should know by late afternoon Wednesday what they're going to do. That sounds very ominous. It doesn't feel very optimistic for Tyler Holton right now.
No, it doesn't. The first set of eyes that looked at the MRI did not have good news. So they're getting a second opinion to see if maybe that person sees something different and hopefully has better news. But no, it at least initially, the initial indication is, man, it's bad. And it's just such a devastating, not just a blow to the team because you're losing one of the best pitchers in the country, but to him. He came back for his junior season. He turned down a pretty sizable chunk of change. It wasn't 7 figures, but he turned down a sizable chunk. and then gets injured 4 innings into his junior season. That's a crushing blow for him. Local kid, made good, and then obviously a huge loss if it turns out to be an elbow injury, a season-ending elbow injury. That's a huge loss for Florida State. Not just because you're losing your best pitcher, like I said yesterday, but you're losing your first baseman. I mean, you're losing essentially 2 starters with 1 injury. So that's a real tough blow for Florida State.
And I was thinking about in the press box, I was like, they could shut him down for TJ for Tommy John surgery, but could he come back in 2 or 3 months and start swinging the bat? But I feel like, there's no way, right? Because, his future, they think, is going to be as a pitcher, so they're going to totally focus all their energy on getting him right and getting him ready. So,
well, and it's interesting. So we'll just do worst case that they actually get confirmation of what they're scared of, and then it might end up being the Tommy John surgery. You shut it down now, well, you're not going to be yourself. We've seen Kobe Johnson. It took a long time.
2 years
but
nearly.
Tyler Holton might not be good again, feeling right for 16 to 18 months. Well, okay, so what does that do as draft status? But would you come back? He'll still get drafted if he's available. I think some teams would take a chance on him, assuming he's going to get healthy and rehab correctly and come back as good as he was. So I assume he'd still get drafted. But where? When? What are teams going to offer a guy that's coming off Tommy John surgery? He doesn't have a ton of leverage. So is he going to try to come back and pitch for a senior season? The whole thing is just it's really a tough deal for a good kid, a local kid. Your heart goes out to him and to the team, quite frankly, because you've seen these first 4 games with the arms they have. Man, it could be a nice team and a really special team. It really hurts it if you're going to lose your ace.
Yeah, there's no way to. You can silver line it in the fact that the team that went to Omaha last year didn't seem to have nearly the talent in pitching or the depth in pitching that this team has. So if last year's squad made it to Omaha, then why can't this team? And last year's season was obviously just totally up and down all the way until the postseason practically. They turned it on there. In the regional round and then got things going. So tough break, but obviously, hopefully we should know more. Go to warchant.com if you already are not. Actually, if you're listening to this in the morning, just focus on work and just making it through, just putting one foot in front of the other because it's like 6:05 in the morning and you're just trying to survive.
Yeah, guys, again, I'm going to say it every time we bring up the time. What are we doing? What are we doing up? Come on, gang. But again, you guys are the productive members of society. You make the world spin. You get up, you get your kids food, you get them ready for school, you get to work maybe by 8 o'clock. I admire that, and that's not sarcasm because that's just not in my DNA. So God bless everyone for listening to this at 6:08 in the morning.
They're Atlas. Just don't shrug, guys. You're holding all of us up, so if you guys shrug, everything goes downhill. Speaking of shrugs, Corey, man, you're the first part of the Jimbo Chronicles went over pretty.
You like that name?
Yeah.
Did you like Jimbo Chronicles? Did you think that was a good name for it?
With my name being Aslan, anytime I hear the word Chronicles, I feel like, it's about me.
Sorry, it's a sore subject.
No,
My bad, buddy.
I'm sure we could have probably given it like a really super cool name, but at the end of the day, it's just Chronicles, the good and the bad of Jimbo. So you had to go first, brave man. You had to run torch.
I did. I was the canary in the coal mine.
You were Magellan trying to figure out this globe was round after all. And lots of feedback on that, obviously, some good, some bad. Did you look at it at all? I know you don't like reading what people have to say a lot of times, but did you hop in there feet first into the tribal council and see what was going on?
Of course not. Not for something like that.
Really?
I wrote what I was going to write. There was nothing that was going to change if anybody had anything negative or positive to say. But also I was on the road a lot yesterday and tonight, so I wasn't in front of a computer much. But no, I saw that I had a lot of views and a lot of replies. So I was like, okay, well, that's kind of the point of this thing is to get people talking, and that it seems to have worked. So what was you read it, what was the gist of the feedback?
I would say an overwhelming majority, it was eye-opening, or not so much eye-opening, but a reinforcement of the innuendo that people had put down on the boards was the fact that he just simply was a very difficult ornery, abrasive human being, especially towards the end of things. But the crazy thing is, you put in there that you had a moment. I don't want to give the story away because you have to pay to read these things. But there was
That's right. Good call, buddy.
There was a moment.
It's worth reading, folks. And warchant.com is a great website.
There was a moment that you chronicled in the Jimbo Chronicles that predates the national championship. So there's so many folks that want to put this on. Jimbo had personal issues that superseded football that made him into who he ultimately became towards the end of his tenure at Florida State. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, did you read the story? Did you see the number, the year that Corey is referencing? And do you realize when Florida State defeated Auburn in a national title game? Your theory, people, does not add up. So I didn't want to dive in and throw that down on folks. But, I mean, by and large, there's obviously the segment of, why are we still talking about this guy? This is right. I saw somebody on YouTube comment on the podcast from the other day that this is the equivalent of getting remarried and then talking about your ex-wife in front of your current wife and saying good things about your ex-wife. Why don't we just move on already? That would probably be 20% of the replies. And the other 80 were just, man, I didn't realize it was this bad. Good riddance. Why didn't it happen sooner? Things of that nature. Yeah, nobody was. Yeah. There wasn't a lot of like, Corey, what are you doing? It was just the crazy minority being the crazy minority.
Well, and as we talked about yesterday, it's a fine line to write something like that. And again, it wasn't my idea, obviously, but Gene had asked me to write a couple paragraphs, like a good and bad of my interactions, because I do think, as we point out in the piece, War Chant has a pretty, it's pretty amazing that we have three people that were here for the entire Jimbo run, from his very first year as offensive coordinator till him resigning before Louisiana Monroe game. Ira, myself, and Gene were all on the beat the whole time. And we all had relationships with Jimbo. We weren't friends with him, but we had relationships with him because over the course of 10 or 11 years, you get to kind of know someone when you deal with them at least once a week. So it was just an odd thing to write because I did have good times with Jimbo. I think out of the guys on the beat over the course of his tenure, I would say Tom D'Angelo, who worked for Palm Beach Post, still does, but doesn't cover Florida State anymore, and myself probably, I think, had the two best relationships with Jimbo. I think I always got the impression, and I got the impression from other people on the beat, that he liked Tom and I the most, or Tom and me.
The golden child, right. The golden children.
Yeah, so, and I don't know why, but he did. And, I go into it a little bit in the piece on why, I just love talking ball with him off the record. It was just, I wasn't trying to get any inside information. I mean, I would occasionally, but about quarterback battles or recruiting or anything like that. I just love talking college football with the guy. So I had a cordial relationship with him. Obviously, the last year I didn't. Once I became a columnist, which didn't happen until 2014, I wasn't really writing a lot of opinions. So I was just a beat writer. And I shouldn't say just. I don't want to diminish it. But when you're a beat writer, you're not writing opinions. You're writing game stories and you're writing features. You're not really espousing opinions and questioning the head coach. Well, I started doing that in 2014, and our relationship changed a little bit, as you can imagine. But I had a pretty good relationship with him overall. He was, other than this past year in the press conferences and that the argument that you mentioned a few minutes ago, we were real cordial with each other. But the problem is you would always hear how he was with other people. And again, as I pointed out in my piece, I don't want to expose people. I don't want to break their confidence or their trust by actually giving specific examples of things I've heard, because it would be pretty easy for Jimbo or someone else to put two and two together and know who told me one of these stories. But you just heard so many of them about just how he wasn't great to people behind the scenes. And that's the reality of it. But he also did a lot of great things. And I think that's what we're trying to do with this, the Jimbo Chronicles, is point out, okay, yeah, it ended terribly. And yes, he could be described as a maniac behind the scenes, but he also had some very good moments with all of us. And he had a great run as the head coach at Florida State. And none of that should be forgotten. It's all a collective. It's all part of who he was and what made him who he was. And it kind of led to his downfall.
It's what made him great, and it's what also made him burn, it seems, every bridge in town. It's just something that it's a beautiful disaster all in one thing. We're going to keep trudging through this, so hunker down, everybody. We're going to bring in Gene Williams in the next segment to discuss his part in the Jimbo Chronicles. It's Wake Up War Chant. We're coming right back after this.
WarChant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source, knows now is a time of true excitement for Nole fans everywhere. That's why WarChant.com is especially proud to announce its newest team member, senior writer Corey Clark. Combine Corey's expertise with owner Gene Williams and managing editor Ira Schafel, and WarChant.com boasts nearly 50 years of experience covering the team you love. It's Taggart time in Tallahassee, and that means now is the perfect time to sign up for your free 30-day trial. From National Signing Day to March Madness, WarChant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
Welcome on back to Wake Up War Chant on this Wednesday. I'm Aslan. We're joined now by the founder, administrator, all sorts of titles, all sorts of hats worn by Gene Williams. If you don't unplug from the internet, you know him as only as .com. But Gene Williams joining us now on Wake Up War Chant. Gene, how are you, man?
Not too bad, Aslan. How you been, man? It's the first time we've been able to do the show together. It's pretty special.
Yeah, man. Thanks for bringing me a quote home. Thanks for bringing me back home, man. It's good to be back.
Hey, good to have you, man. And you will get, I know you like to mention those sponsors. I got to tell you, you got to chip out for Centrale, fantastic pizza, and then the Township, man. They got some good sausage and a lot of nice meats over there.
Yeah, For the Table Hospitality. They bring you this segment and every single segment here on Wake Up War Chant. Is it Centrale? Is that how you pronounce it?
I like to call it Centrale. I think it is Central, but I like to put the E on the end.
I got you. Yeah, always adding some flair there. So, all right, Gene, right now, War Chant is burning up right now on the message boards, especially the Tribal Council, where the first part of the Jimbo Chronicles was posted by Corey Clark on Tuesday morning. This is kind of some background, I guess, on maybe not so much how things went south for Jimbo, but rather just who Jimbo really was. And it's kind of been a weird thing for me to read because I was outside the bubble. You guys, Ira, Corey, were here the whole time, obviously, when Jimbo was here. So I kind of had this, fantasy image of how cool of a guy Jimbo was. And there seems to be a lot of other things that were underlying towards the end of his tenure that might have not represented him in such a great light.
Yeah, it's but there were some cool things too, and I know Corey shared some stories, and I do in my part that's going to be up today. And first of all, we're doing this is when I first spoke to Ira about this, and we've kind of batted around a lot of different ideas. What's the best way to approach this? So we're going to do a 3-part series that we're in the middle of now, just kind of highlighting our experiences, the good and the bad, with Fisher, and then I think Corey and Ira they're going to do a little bit more, kind of like how things went so well. That first part, from kind of 2010 to 2013-14, and then kind of how things went kind of started going downhill. Then I'll probably wrap it up kind of what happened, maybe at least in my opinion, the last couple months. But yeah, that's a thing. It's not all. I know some people just want to throw Fisher completely under the bus, and it would be easy to do that. But there really were some great times. I know you've pointed out, Aslan, you've gotten some crap for it, but he did a lot. This program was really messed up when he took over in 2010, and obviously won a national championship, which I think is maybe one of the best college teams in the last 50 years. I mean, they were unbelievable that year, and Jimbo Fisher put that together. He gets credit for that. And I had some fun times. I mean, and Corey brought this up, man. There was nobody better to talk to. And you want to talk football with him, and he would, some of those times, especially early on as head coaching, he'd pull you aside and he'd start talking X's and O's, or he'd talk football history, man. It was like E.F. Hutton, man. You just stopped and you listened and you soaked it up, because he was a special cat when it came to football. And I don't know if I've ever met anybody. You can ask him 1985 who was the backup left tackle at Florida State. He would know that, and he'd know the stats. He'd know all that kind of stuff. You're like, how does he wasn't even here? How does he know that stuff? So in that respect, a pretty neat guy.
Gene Williams joining us here on Wake Up War Chant, discussing the Jimbo Chronicles, a 3-part series that started on Tuesday, will be ongoing today with a story from Gene himself. So, Gene, I guess if Florida State fans could be stuck at an airport on a layover, they'd love to be able to sit at a bar next to you and kind of, bend your ear to all sorts of things they want to talk about when it comes to Florida State. What made you guys want to go ahead and kind of delve into this stuff and kind of empty out the old stories about Jimbo? Because there's so many things that fans want to know about, the inside stories, if you will, and some of those things you guys can't obviously divulge. But why did you guys decide to go ahead and kind of let this one rip and kind of open up what you guys knew about Jimbo in this sort of fashion?
Well, first, I think we're in a real unique position here at War Chant because myself, Ira, and Corey, we've been here the entire time, going back to when Jimbo Fisher's an offensive coordinator. No other, not to draw shade on anybody else, but no one has that kind of resource. So it's unique that we've had our whole staff here for the entire time to be able to cover this area. And there's so many layers. First when he was forced out, resigned, whatever you want to call it, I mentioned some people on the board said, heck, well, I'll look back and kind of talk about what maybe happened down the stretch. And I sort of think, this is so complex and there's so many sides to this, and I think we really need to have a multi-part feature in all the aspects of Jimbo Fisher, because it really is fascinating, all the different things he did, how he interacted with people, the good and the bad, and then finally how things kind of fell apart at the end. So I think it's fair to him and to his time here to cover all of that, the good and the bad, and not just let loose and talk about how things were awful the last couple months, because they really were. It was a pain covering this team. It was not fun to be around him. You could tell I don't think the players or anybody in the administration liked being around him. But I don't think that's representative of his whole time here. So from that perspective, yeah, we really wanted to just cover all the bases. And again, we were in a unique perspective to really touch base on all that.
So these stories are being posted on the Tribal Council, which is only available to members of warchant.com. Obviously, you being the astute businessman you are, you're not going to give everything away. But is there anything that kind of stood out that's going to be in that piece that will be up later today on warchant.com about your experiences kind of dealing with Jimbo that you'll always kind of remember or resonated with you?
Yeah, I basically talk about three things that are really positive experience, and then about three not so much ones. So I'll share a good and a bad one here with you. And the good one, really, it's probably the thing that I was most happy and thrilled that Jimbo Fisher did. And I think I'm trying to figure out the year. I think it was about 2012 or 13. My father was up for the weekend in one of those Saturday practices. You've been out to those, Aslan. Back in the day, you get the coach coming off the field. Yep. And back then, Coach Fisher would talk to us. And my dad came out, and he just stood out there. You have the little area of the practice field, and you walk out towards the locker room. So he had our interview, and sometimes I got to walk off with Jimbo Fisher and just chit chat. And we're walking off, say, hey, any chance you can come over, just say hi to my dad, shake his hand. He'd really appreciate that. So he came over, shook hands with my dad, and didn't just do the typical, and you see this a lot of times, shake him on the hand, pat him on the back, hey, thanks for coming out, nice to meet you, and then walk off. He took probably 10, 15 minutes, spoke to my dad in depth about football. My dad, growing up in Columbus, big Ohio State. Don't hold it against my dad. He grew up an Ohio State fan. I've kind of beat it out of him. He's now a Florida State guy.
Well done.
But his family was close with Woody Hayes and all them, and just sharing stories with Coach Fisher about the old Ohio State days and Woody Hayes and all those things. And my dad just was beaming after that the head coach of Florida State took all this time to talk to me about it. I called Fisher up the next day and thanked him profusely about that, how he made my dad's day. And it was really cool that he did that. So I will always be thankful that he did that. But and that was an example, one side, what a gracious guy he could be at one point. And that's something you would expect from Bobby Bowden. Bobby Bowden did those things all the time, and everybody that interacted with him always had that story. Unfortunately, there weren't enough of those with Jimbo Fisher, but that was one time that he did something. And then the other one, and I went through it pretty detailed in the story that's up on War Chant, but the first interaction I had with him that was of a, let's say, not so friendly experience was we'd written a story after Jameis Winston committed about Sean McGuire's reaction. And to Sean McGuire's credit, the kid couldn't be more gracious. I mean, he said, I can't wait for the competition. This is great for the class. And I put the quote of what he said in the story in my version so you can kind of see what he said. And I got a first call from Damian Craig, real mad at me, and I couldn't really understand why he was upset. And then Jimbo called me up and just lit me up, absolutely blistered me for how dare I write a story like this and put a kid in that position. He goes, and he pulled the old, he liked to pull this, well, what was that? What if that was your kid? And I go, well, I'd be proud of my kid because he handled it maturely. He gave great answers, and it made him look like a team player and everything else, and he lost it. And he just completely ripped me a new one at that point. So, I let him vent, and by the end, we were fine. He had settled down, and we still had a very well-working professional relationship after that. It never affected anything. But it really kind of showed you, the two sides of Jimbo Fisher. And that's one thing I wanted to get out of this series, to point out it's not all bad. It's not all good. He was an odd guy, but he could, when he lit somebody up, boy, you knew it. You felt like you were just tore down and beat up afterwards.
All right, folks, go to warchant.com, check out that piece from Gene, and then tomorrow we'll have something from Ira, and then the series will on go with another few pieces with the Jimbo thing. So we can, some folks, hopefully they'll think that'll close a chapter on Jimbo. They can, no longer hear about him. But again, as Corey and I mentioned, he's part of history when it comes to Florida State. He's part of the fabric of the school. So it's hard just to kind of erase him out of things. But as we let you go here, Gene, we got about 1 minute left here. It's day 2 now of the chase for Florida State and their offseason conditioning program. Obviously, I know you guys want to get a hold of Willie. We want to get a hold of Willie and kind of talk to him. But what are you kind of hoping to see or maybe hear from what they're going to get out of the chase? And I guess, what's your thoughts on it being called the chase? The whole thing is right. They're going to chase excellence and then or chase greatness and then get excellence on the way up to the top.
Well, I love it because, he's got to bring, Coach Fisher was fourth quarter Bills, and I think it was good for him to kind of rebrand that and then bring it in the chase. And it's a different because it's first thing in the morning, and I feel sorry for the kids having to probably get up at 5 a.m. and get their butts out there. But again, it's a culture change. And, and I'm hoping he'll give us some access, and it seems like we probably will. And I'd like to get out there, even if you and I got to get up. I know you're not a morning person either.
Easy,
but
don't get carried away now.
Yeah, we'll get out there. It'll be worth it. But, I want to see the culture change take effect. And a little bit of interactions we've had with everybody in this new staff, they're so different. And the culture is so 180 from Jimbo Fisher. And I want to see how that transition takes place among the team. And I think it's going to be fun. And it's I think it'll be more difficult to go from I guess you can call him a player's coach, but I think it's more of just more excitement, letting kids be kids. And I think it's a lot easier to go from Jimbo Fisher type system, a Saban-esque, to that than vice versa. I think kids would have a harder time adjusting. So I think they'll soak up this culture and this change pretty quickly, but I'm looking forward to seeing that firsthand.
Gene Williams, founder, administrator of warchant.com. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it, Gene.
Hey, thanks, Aslan. Keep up the good work, buddy.
Thanks a lot, man. Checks in the mail, or just take it out of my paycheck this time around.
You got it.
All right, don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back after this. More Wake Up War Chant coming up right after the break.
You're locked in to Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Back at it here on ESPN 97.9. It's Wake Up War Chant. I'm Aslan. He's Corey Clark. This show brought to you by For the Table Hospitality. College Town. Go there. Throw a dart. You'll probably hit one of these 3 great locations. Madison Social, Central, and Township. Visit them. Be plentiful. Have good times. And then maybe on a Tuesday, you can witness Corey and I destroy your hopes and your dreams in trivia.
One of these Tuesdays, get ready. Depending on if it's the right category, holy moly, I'm going to bring hell with me when it comes to that trivia. Is all I'm saying.
Shut it down. Shut it down. All right, so the chase ongoing for Florida State. You just heard from Gene talking about the old coach. Corey spoke about the old coach in the first segment. And
I don't want to talk about him anymore.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the only follow-up question I was really going to have, and we've already talked about it, is just, do you have to be like an SOB to be a successful coach? I mean, you can talk about, you can cite all the good coaches right now at the top of their game in most professional sports, and I would imagine a lot of the people around them probably have stories about them being a jerk at one point.
Yeah, probably, but you also, maybe different sports. I mean, Mike Martin, you can't argue, it's fact, is one of the best college baseball coaches of all time. He's about to break an all-time wins record. I wouldn't dare think anyone's called him an SOB. They've probably been mad at some of the decisions he's made, but he's a nice man. Steve Kerr seems like a legitimately nice person. It's Dabo. Willie Taggart.
Stop poking holes in my theory,
from Willie Taggart.
Jeez.
So you can, but I do think some people are just wired that way, and it's not so much of being an SOB as, man, I just don't care about your feelings. I am so singularly focused on what I'm trying to do that I want it done my way. I want it now. If you don't know what I want, then I'm going to be mad at you for that, and I do not care about your feelings one iota. And that's because I get paid a lot of money to win games, and there's a lot of pressure on me, and I'm trying to do everything I can to make sure we win games. And it's just such a singular focus that you don't step back and maybe sometimes understand the humanity of it, or the lack of humanity, I guess. And that's not a Jimbo-specific thing. That's a societal thing, really. And it's also just, I think it's a head football coach thing. But again, it's not just specific to football. There are those types of coaches and those types of CEOs through all walks of life. But there's more than one way to do that. There's a Jimbo and there's a Dabo. Well, they're both successful in their own right? Dabo's been better, if you want to be honest.
Has he,
Dabo's sustained it longer, but they both won championships doing it completely different ways.
Like how is Dabo sustained it longer? I mean, Dabo's window is what, 13? I mean, can you count 13? He won
a BCS bowl in 2012, and he just was in the playoff. He's been in the BSC, but he hadn't had a 5 and 6. He's been at least 12. He's been 11 or 12 wins every year since 2012. That's why.
All right.
And they're not showing any signs of slowing down. They just got all those guys to come back. I mean, do you think Clemson's going to go 5 and 6 this year? Or you think they might win 11 or 12 again?
Whatever.
You know what I mean?
Stop trying to introduce logic into this. I mean, the thing is, if we're judging, the ACC was not very solid last year. So Florida State can get their head out of there. You know what? If Willie gets this whole thing lit up and rolling again, that Florida State's going to be a problem for them. I mean, Florida State was a problem for them, even despite the struggles of the last 3 years, relatively speaking. With last year,
sure, but they won those games. And at the end of the day, I don't know how else you would argue who has the better program than Clemson's won 3 in a row, been to 2 national championship games in the playoff this year, and aren't slowing down at all. They might be number 1 or number 2 in the country to start next season. They certainly didn't just go 5 and 6, and they've been very good since 2012. I mean, they have. I know, Florida State housed them in 13. And I don't know how Dabo lost that game in 14 to Smag, but he did. But, man, Clemson's the second best program in the country. They've lost, 7 games in 5 years? It's remarkable what he's done. And, again, he got all those defensive linemen to come back, and he's got the number 1 or number 2 quarterback in the country coming in. I mean, they just recruited a high level, and they win 11 or 12 games a year. So he didn't fizzle like Jimbo did. I mean, Jimbo, again, man, like I said, he finished his career at Florida State 17 and 12 in his last 29. Dabo hadn't lost 12 games this decade. So, and that's not true. That's a hyperbole, but it's not far off. Dabo just has a better program. Clemson's a better program than Florida State. The difference is Florida State's ceiling is always a little bit higher than Clemson's, I think. I think if Willie gets this thing running, they can be better than Clemson in a year or two, or 2 or 3, I should say. 2 or 3 years, they can be a better program than Clemson if he does well, but there's no guarantee. But, again, I know we like to poke fun at Dabo. My man has the second best program in the country. And, again, my point all along was that Jimbo won at a high level doing it his way, being the micromanager, being the dictator, the tyrant. Dabo is not that in any way, shape, or fashion in any of that. And he still wins, too. So there's different ways to do it. You don't have to be an SOB. But it also doesn't mean just because you're an SOB you can't win. There's plenty of proof on both sides.
And Dabo's team looked pretty miserable and lousy against Alabama, and Florida State actually had a lead on Alabama until their special teams went kaput. Anyhow, moving along. Question.
Oh, right, but I mean, again.
No, stop talking about it in a positive light, Corey. I'm done. I'm done with you on this. Corey.
Okay, right. Sorry.
Revisiting a topic from the other day, Corey, let me ask you this. If Willie goes 9-5, 6-7, 10-4, does he come back for a 4th year? 9-5, 6-7, 10-4.
16 losses? No. I can't even imagine. Maybe if they started out that third season 2-4 and then won the final 8. I can't imagine him losing 16 games in 3 years and coming back for a year 4.
Those are the first 3 seasons of William Christopher Dabo Sweeney.
Well, again, but he was taking over Clemson. Clemson hadn't won the ACC since 81.
Yeah.
They had well, not 81, since before Florida State joined the league. They hadn't won a national title since 81, but they hadn't been nationally relevant really since Bobby was beating up his kid in those Bowden Bowls. That was the only time Clemson was ever talked about. So yeah, I got that, and it's kind of crazy when you think about that. Number one, that he was hired at all. That he got the interim tag pulled because he was just the wide receivers coach. And that, he lost 16 games in 3 years. Now, when you look at Clemson, the 5 or 6 years preceding that was kind of par for the course at Clemson. They were always 9-5, 8-5, 7-6, maybe 9-4 in there somewhere. But, maybe that 10-4 I don't remember that season at all. I don't even know what year that was.
2011.
But was that 11? So they beat Florida State up there when Trickett had to play.
Yep.
So they saw enough that year to think, okay, something's about to happen. Maybe they felt good that they had turned the corner and they were heading in the right direction, and they were right. I mean, it's a crazy hire when you think back on it that they hired him, and he seemed like such a goofball. And then his first 3 years, he lost 16 games. And then how many games has he lost since? 9? 11? I mean, it's pretty remarkable that they stuck with him, and it paid off. But again, I don't think Florida State is nearly as down as Clemson was when Dabo took over.
They've lost 11 games after his first 3 years. They've lost 11 games.
I mean, that's crazy, right? That was a good decision to stay with him.
I wonder if we'll show that sort of patience. One thing
Florida State's lost 12 in the last 3.
I know, Corey. We all know. We've been there. We lived them.
3 of them to Clemson.
We've had
barely. They were all good games.
Yeah. So we've had, speaking of patience, we've had a lot of good questions so far over on the Tribal Council in the Renegade Express thread. I'm almost tempted to kind of dive into them here, but we'll try to hold off, I guess, until Friday.
Hey, I've got a Renegade Express question for you.
Okay,
so I have a friend, Tim Linnefelt. People probably know him. If they listen to Seminole Headlines, we talk about him a lot, and he's on Seminoles.com, and you might follow him on Twitter. Sadly, and I'm only saying this because the obituary is in the Tallahassee Democrat, and it was on Facebook, his mom passed away last week. And so he Facebook linked to the obituary, basically saying, look, it was a rough go of it lately. I'm sad to report that my mom passed away. And then he linked to the obituary. And am I supposed to like that? You know what I mean? Like usually when somebody posts something on Facebook and you want them to know that you've read it and you care, you hit the like button.
No.
But I don't want to like that.
You click and hold down the like button, and then it'll pop open some other emotion options. There's an actual there's like a sad emoji sort of thing.
I could do that then.
Yeah.
Okay, because that just seemed really kind of callous to click like.
Right.
But anyway, that was a question I'd been thinking about last night, and I threw it out there. I wanted to get your take on it. But you gave me the information I needed, so I'll go add the sad emotion, because I am obviously very sad. I lost, as many people know, I lost my dad 6 or 7 years ago, and it gets easier, but it's never easy. It just isn't. It's never easy. Especially, I don't know where, I'll stop this train real quick, but my son was 3 when my dad died. My son is 9 now and is a sports nut. And my dad would just get so much joy out of being with him and talking with him. And that makes you sad. And it's just this, it's part of life, and it's a really sad deal. So Tim's not listening to this because it's too early in the morning, but I'm not going to like your Facebook post, buddy, but I'm really sorry for you.
Well said, Corey. We'll be right back, wrapping up the show after this.
Darn pop-ups and video ads.
Are you wasting your time again on clickbait FSU updates that are bloated down with ads?
Yeah. And after crashing my computer, the information isn't even up to date. You're on warchant.com. What's really going on with the Seminoles?
For the real scoop, you'll need to get your own Warchant subscription.
What's it cost?
Free. There's a 30-day trial offer right now.
You know I like free. Sign me up.
Use the promo code WARCHANT30. That's WARCHANT30. Nobody has more accurate and timely information on the Noles than warchant.com.
Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole source.
Down, 1 to go. It's Wake Up War Chant. I'm Aslan. He is Corey Clark. We are brought to you by For the Table Hospitality. 3 locations in College Town, Township, Central, Madison Social. At Township on Wednesday, and every single Wednesday, starting at 7 o'clock, a select draft beer. They call it Wedenstein Wednesday. Corey, Wedenstein? It's
okay.
That
doesn't sound like Mick Ultra.
No. Proof 850 Pale Ale or Deep Reef Dweller IPA, as I'm butchering these. Man, you craft beer people, just call it something like that rolls off the tongue. Anyhow, they'll offer a liter of that beer for half-liter price on Wednesdays, starting at 7 o'clock.
All right. I assume Mick Ultra is just the same price. It's steady.
Probably. Just steady Eddie. Steady Eddie on the Mick Ultra. Delicious stuff. So, Corey, life has become a little bit easier for you. We mentioned on the show previously that you have this great recollection, a recall is the word I was looking for. You have great recall when it comes to remembering statistics, events of the sports variety. You'll no longer have to cram your mind with who won the 2013 national title in basketball because Louisville went ahead and had it vacated. So your life's become a little more easier this week. So I hope things are trending well for you there right now, friend.
Yeah, and it's preposterous, and my feelings on this are known because we talked about it maybe last week about how that just somewhere in the last decade that just became the punishment that the NCAA wanted. Was, hey, let's vacate. Let's not, like, it would be one thing if they said, you know what, Louisville, because you used, prostitutes and you had those kind of parties to lure recruits, not only did you not win the 2013 title, but we're going to give it to Michigan, who finished second. Well, they don't do that. They just say nobody won it, and it's preposterous. What kind of deterrent is that to say 5 years after the fact, hey, that championship that you all won, remember, we all saw it. It was a great game. You played Michigan down to the wire and you pulled it out. That didn't happen. Nobody won the 2003 national title. We're going to still keep the hundreds of millions of dollars that we made off it. Obviously, that's what we are as the NCAA. We have to have that money, but nobody won it. Take your banner down. It's just utter nonsense.
All right, what's not utter nonsense is talking about football. I'm going to dive into the Wake Up War Chant Renegade Express mailbag for just one question for today.
Let's do it.
I think what we should do here, Corey, is if we get to 10 questions, so I'll post the thread on Sunday nights, I think maybe now. I'll post on Sunday night. If we get to 10 questions by, Wednesday morning, we'll go ahead and do a mailbag on Wednesday. We'll put another thread, and then maybe we'll have some to do on Friday as well. Do you think that's a good idea or no? Or we should probably talk about this?
That's a great idea. Just I like interacting with the listeners and the readers. That's always fun.
You just don't like reading what they write on your pieces, but
of course not. Well, my thinking there is I'm okay talking and like answering a question and giving an opinion, but once the cat's out of the horse is out of the barn, I've already written it. It's my opinion. You're not going to change it. Just like I'm not going to change yours by saying somebody says I didn't like this, Corey. I thought it was weak. And why are you doing this now? I don't want to be like, well, you do. I mean, there's no point in doing it. I just hope people like it. The more anything, I hope people are entertained by the stuff I write. That's all.
Yeah, no one wins at those sort of arguments. All right, let's dive into it. We'll take the first question. And since it's been such a downer of a show talking about John James and other things that are not good for the soul, let's just go ahead.
Dabo.
Let's just go ahead and wreck Anonymous 911's heart here. Okay, Aslan and Corey. With Walt Bell's history of trick plays and the skill sets of a few guys like Cam Akers and DJ Matthews, how wild and unpredictable do you see our offense getting this year? I'll go ahead. I'll throw the cold water first. I'll throw the cold water first. I don't know. Maybe I'm still battered fan syndrome of the guy before that just none of that stuff was going to happen. I don't know how much of that you deploy, especially in your first year. And I think a lot of the story, and I think part of it was, I think you actually reported on it, Walt Bell, made some sort of mention about, I've got 300 trick plays in my book. I think that was just kind of just to give you an insight into how, excited he is about football and how much he loves the game. I don't think he's necessarily got it. Every team puts in 1 or 2 trick plays per game. I don't think we'll see, a crazy play, some exotic alien formation every single week. I hope we do, but I'm not bracing for it.
Yeah, but I think there's no way we could see less than we've seen. So I do think there'll be more. I do think there's a chance they could do something bizarre every game. Certainly, once every couple of games for sure. I just think, I think there will be. I hesitate to even say it, because it was talked about so much last year, it became made fun of. But I do think you'll see sets where Cam Akers is a quarterback some. I do think you'll see, things where you have, 3 linemen way on one sideline, 2 linemen on the other. I mean, because he does do that. He likes to do trick plays. He loves trick plays. And, man, this fan base was born on trick plays. That's how they made their name. And I think it's kind of cool that a bit of that is coming back. It won't be, crazy like the Arkansas high school coach that does a bunch of crazy stuff. It won't be that, but it'll be, it'll be different. And I do think he'll go into his game plan every week with 3 or 4 of those types of plays in his back pocket. Now the question is, how many will the boss man let him use?
Yeah, will the
How
boss
many
man
do they need to use?
Will the boss man be scared? It's his first season. Do you grab the bull by the horns in year number one and go for broke? Because, I mean, that's kind of what you do when you're running those sets and those plays. Or will it be one of those things where you don't want to jeopardize? And obviously, the tempo and the scores of the game will dictate those sort of things. But, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just throwing cold water on things. I'm not expecting, all sorts of fun, loosey-goosey football out of Florida State. But then I don't know, man. Look at what he wants to do with all the jerseys. Mario Edwards Sr. tweeting out chrome helmets. Chrome helmets, black jerseys.
Those were something. Yeah, I mean, I think I disagree with you a little bit. I think they will kind of have a little more trickeration than what we. Well, I mean, again, obviously that's going to happen. It's going to be more than used to.
Way to go on the branch
one
out
or two
there.
a game. I do. I think you could have one or two a game, and I think if you're going to do it, this is the year to do it. Because quite frankly, he's not getting fired after his first year. And he can set a tone for what his offense is going to be and what his tenure is going to be if he adds some excitement like that. Now, obviously, the W's are more important than anything else. But again, this fan base they grew up with that. And I think that'd be a nice homage to pay to the guy before Jimbo. And also, I shouldn't say that, to Bobby Bowden. I should just refer to him as the guy before Jimbo.
Come on.
But I just think that I do expect a little bit of that each game. Something different, something unique each game. Heck, they're going to be running 85 plays. One of them could be a trick one.
Well, again, way to go out on a limb there, Corey, and saying that it's going to be more tricky than it was in the years past because the guy before didn't want to do
anything. That's how I roll.
Yeah. I don't know. Again, every single team from Pee Wee to NFL, maybe not NFL, has they've installed 2 or 3 trick plays per game. Just how often do they get used? But I mean, you've seen Alabama do things. Alabama had double passes in the national title game that they ended up losing in Tampa. They had the onside kick the year before. I think they did something crazy against Georgia. I want to say that I can't think off the top of my head right now, but
they put in the backup quarterback after halftime.
That counts.
They didn't have to do that.
Does that count?
Way to go, Nick.
Yeah, jerk. Thanks for listening, folks. Jeff Cameron coming at 3:00.
These recruiting updates are nothing but fluff.
Are you wasting your time again on free blogs and social media to get the scoop on FSU recruiting?
Yeah, it's all bait and switch. Get me excited with a headline, but get nothing in return. You're on warchant.com. What's really going on with FSU recruiting?
Could be another top 5 class, but for the real scoop, you'll need to get your own War Chant subscription.
What's it cost?
Free. There's a 30-day trial offer. Just sign up and you'll get full access through signing day. And nobody has more accurate and timely information on recruiting than warchant.com.
You know I like free. Sign me up. Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole source.